Hello! Today I was actually going to record the blue-white control deck that's been dominating the format since basically the format's inception. But I decided that that deck was very boring and I didn't want to play it. The deck itself isn't that bad, like you just draw a bunch of cards and eventually kill them with Angel of Serenity. But the mirror's absolutely the most abysmal experience ever. You just like both stare at each other with chases and Sphinx's Revelations, and you start Angel Serenity, and then they Angel Serenity, your Angel Serenity, then you Angel Serenity, their Angel Serenity to get your Angel Serenity back, and they do the same, and so on and so on and so on. It's just really, really long games that are not actually particularly fun. So instead, I decided I was going to play this blue-white-red deck. And, I mean, it's not really that similar to the blue-white deck, where it just the blue-white deck, whereas the blue-white deck will just stall and stall and stall and stall until it can drop an Angel Serenity. I'm trying to play like a couple creatures and a couple removal spells in order to get a Symbol of Legion out, which kills people very quickly. So to do this, I have a suite of creatures. I have 4 Is It Static Casters, a card that's actually fairly good. Right now, it's pretty good against mono red. It's also good against opposing a Symbol of Legions. And Boros Reckoner, good against aggro as always. A neat thing you can do is actually ping your Static Casters, or ping your Reckoners, and it'll do damage to them. You can redirect the damage to them, so you can like actually ping them with your Static Casters every turn, which is pretty nice. And I just random 2 Keening Apparitions to get rid of Detention Spheres and provide some early blockers against like mono red or something like that. I also have this suite of 2-drop removal spells. Azorius Charm, a very, very, very good card still. Makes them waste their turn by having to replay their attacker. Is It Charm's actually not that good, but your options are pretty limited in blue-red. It acts as a removal spell that most of the creatures in this format that you attack with have 2 toughness, so you can easily kill them. But it also can counter a Jace randomly against control or something, which comes up sometimes, but not very frequently, since you often have to tap out in this deck. I have some Detention Spheres in here, which is a card I'm not very fond of, actually, because I don't know, it just seems kind of slow against aggro, and control always seems to have an answer for it. But it does have a place. It is a catch-all. And Counterflux against the control decks. Counterflux is a very good card. It's an answer that they can answer. And 4 Spring Verdicts for the aggro decks, obviously. It's the only reset button in the format that's reliable at all. I mean, Merciless Eviction's good too, but you can counter it. And mostly the deck, though, is Jace, a Symbol of Legion, and Sphinx's Revelation, which is funny because I only have 3 of each Sphinx and a Symbol. That's because I couldn't really find enough room to justify really a 4th one. I would probably take out a Detention or something. I could take out 2 Detention Spheres so I can Symbol of Legion and Sphinx's Revelation, but the other 2 copies are on the board, which I'll talk about later. But mainly, the Jaces and the Sphinx's Revelation will give you incremental card advantage over time. So you play Jace and you can impulse it, or you can protect your board, or what have you. And eventually try to draw into a Symbol of Legion with your Sphinx's Revelation or the Jace. And play the Symbol of Legion and win. That's the game plan. Now, as I said before, I pretty much decided the last minute to not play blue-white. So this sideboard is kind of a mess. I don't really know numbers or anything. My sideboard is very unpolished right now. But I have a Symbol of Legion. I have basically just an aggro sideboard and a control sideboard. My aggro sideboard is only 5 cards. It's like Frostburn Weird and Mugging. Those are usually against the weenie decks. Against the mid-rangey decks like Jund or the black-green-white deck, I will bring an Angel Serenity, because it's a card that provides me with immense advantage that they can't necessarily match. But against blue-white, I usually don't bring an Angel Serenity because they also have Angel Serenity, and I don't want to play a giant boring game. I don't think it's also particularly good against them when they have Wrath and Detention Sphere and so on, Azorius Charm, stuff like that. Cards that the green decks don't have access to. Against control itself, I have a ton of Dispels for Sphinx's Revelation, Azorius Charm, all that business. And counterfluxes, which, it's a little more, it's much slower to leave open counterflux after Sphinx's Revolutioning for something, but sometimes in late game you just have to do it, and it's also just a very good counterspell that they cannot dispel. It also can counter Jasolt. I've countered a Jasolt with it sometimes because Jasolt casts both of his cards on his ultimate, so you can overload counterflux and counter them both, actually. I have a Sphinx's Revelation to not get outcard advantage by the just straight blue-white decks, and another Symbol of Legion, so I have more threats. Yeah, I play 26 lands. I have 4 of each of the Guild Gates, Izzet, and Azorius for Steamheads, Hollow Fountains, and Sacred Foundries, and 3 of each Plains and Mountains. No islands, because if I want to play Boros Reckoner on turn 3, which I often do, having 8 comfortably tapped lands is a detriment enough. I don't need to be having islands, because islands can't cast Boros Reckoner at all. So that's the deck. We'll go to round 1 in a minute here. Hopefully I do well, I'm not sure. Sideboarding is going to look really awkward because I pretty much made this deck off the last minute based on just a couple deck lists that only did okay, but I figured I'd give this a shot, so I'll be back in a couple minutes for the first test run of this blue-white-red Symbol of Legion deck. So, see you then.